Hi, welcome back to Plan9Crunch. I'm Joe Gibson, and every week we like to do a reads of some kind of thing. Sometimes we repeat novels, other times we read from one but talk about a few others. I talked at length about Greg Key's Monsterverse novelizations earlier, and I want to revisit the Godzilla x Kong novelization. For a specific reason you'll see in a moment, but also this is just one of his best ones. I guess KOTM was really good as well. I really liked that one. But they clearly had more of a confidence in this release as they went from mass market paperback to more expensive and meatier paperback. As you may already know, but I'll tell you again for copyright reasons, the ISBN is 978-1803368-108. The more you know. Alright, so specifically I want to read the scene where Kong first encounters Suko. Partially because Suko, as I went on in my review of the movie, is one of the most dynamic characters in this film, who has a really great arc that is told wordlessly in the movie, but gets expounded upon here. In some ways, Suko is the deuteragonist to Kong's protagonist. Let's see. So, as you remember from the movie, Kong sees a shadow in a mist once he goes into the subterranean realm. A large shadow that then gets a little bit smaller. Then he realized the shadow shape was moving away. He almost started forward, but then he realized that something was coming toward him after all, something much smaller than the silhouette in the mist. He understood then what he had seen was a shadow. The shadow of this, made bigger by the haze and light, just as his own shadow had gotten longer in the world above on Skull Island when the light of day was low in the sky. And the thing that made it did look like him, just much smaller. It wasn't as tall as his legs. He could see its face now, and that was a lot like his too. And he understood its expression. It was scared of him. He lowered the axe, not sure what was happening, but what this thing was. It was much bigger than the little ones, but so much smaller than him. It had fur, but lighter than his, red in color. Its head and eyes were too big. It reminded him of Gia when he first found her, small, helpless. He noticed that it had red stripes painted on its torso, the same color as the handprints in his cave. It still looked afraid, like it wanted to run away. He didn't want it to do that, so he squatted down, trying to appear less threatening. He put one knee on the ground and laid his axe on the stone. Then he reached out with one hand, the way he did to Gia. The small ape thing took his hand. It came forward a little, then a little more. It reached out its little hand too, palm and fingers down, submissive, making faint sounds. It flinched away from him, as if touching would hurt, but Kong stayed still, and it reached back closer, closer. This was an ape, he thought, like him. This could be part of the family he had searched for, that Gia had told him might be down there someplace, that he had given up hope of finding. Then the little ape lunged forward and bit his hand. The pain was nothing. The little teeth stung but didn't draw blood. But it was a surprise. It was his own kind. He knew that now, but it was attacking him. Why? Because it was scared? Maybe because it had also never seen something like itself? It ran. Kong ran after it. He charged under a stone arch. The mist ended there, but the cave continued on, much bigger, with a long valley running down it. The small ape dashed ahead, and he kept after it. Then he heard something thump behind him. He spun around. It was another ape, but this one was much larger, close to his own size. One of his eyes was scarred white, and his fur was very short, light gray. The hair in his head was almost gone, which looked strange. He held a huge leg bone in one hand, and his posture was threatening. Like the little ape, he had red stripes painted on him. Kong stared at the other ape, wondering what was happening. Then its mouth widened. Kong saw motion from the verge of his vision, but not soon enough. Two massive shapes crashed into him from opposite directions. Powerful hands grabbed him and mashed his face into the dirt. He dropped his axe, which went sliding across the ground. It was a trap, like the one he had made for the pack hunters. The little one had led him into it. They held him down, grinding his face against the dirt as the one with the leg bone club headed for him. These were apes like him, his kind. Why were they trying to kill him? He had searched so long. For this? He was Kong. No one attacked him. Enraged, he reached out and grasped a boulder in his hand, then swung it back and hit one of the apes holding him on the side of the head. The ape yowled and let go, with only one now holding him. Kong managed to stagger to his feet as the other ape put him in a headlock. One Eye charged forward, swinging his club. Kong spun to the impact, fell not on him, but on the ape clinging to his back. One Eye's swing overbalanced him when he went past. Kong drove his elbow into his attacker's back, knocking him sprawling. The one he'd hit with the club, or rock, was already back up, charging him, this time with the club. Kong intercepted the weapon and caught it, then grabbed the ape's arm and used the double grip to heave him to a flip, slamming him into the ape One Eye had just clubbed. Kong held onto the weapon. He noticed that both of the apes that had tackled him to the ground also had red stripes on their chest and belly. One Eye was back, this time with Kong's axe. Kong stepped away from the swing and clubbed him, knocking him down again. They were all down. He discarded the club and reached for his axe. Then the little one came out of nowhere, hurling himself and grappling onto Kong's face, snapping and scratching with his nail. Still empty-handed, Kong reached up to pull him off, but the small ape was remarkably strong for its size. By the time he pulled him off, two of the others had recovered and were coming for him. Holding him by the foot, he swung the small ape like a club, striking one of his attackers in the head and connecting with the second on the backswing. One Eye was next, yowling and lunging at him. Kong kicked him in the chest, knocking him back, and then threw the small ape at him. Okay, we're going to pause here for a second. I'm going to finish this page. But one of the major criticisms against GxK that I tried to argue against in my review was that Scar King isn't in enough of the movie. To be the so-called main villain, main antagonist that the film is building up to, he has such little screen time. But he's present through the red stripes that he's putting on his apes, that they're spreading throughout Kong's cave. And within the way that Suko and these other apes act is a result of his governance, his parenting also for Suko, as it's heavily implied in this that he is the biological father of Suko. Scar King is, I mean. Now, on the topic of my review of Godzilla x Kong, Godzilla Kong the New Empire, I may have made a grievous error. Okay, so in the review, even though I had watched the movie 10 times to prepare, and I had this in front of me, I insisted that one of the other two apes disappeared from the fight after Kong lays into him pretty hard on the ground. I thought, we don't see that ape again. He could have killed Kong once he was by the cliff, and that it was a pretty big issue on the choreography of an otherwise really well choreographed battle because they're all at the same time attacking and recovering from their strikes. No, Kong killed him. Stone Fist is that ape. Catcher is the other one that falls off the cliff. So you can see him in the movie. I noticed that up on the latest rewatch. This is technically a YouTuber apology, but I'm also bringing a citation since I don't want to show the movie in the video, so yeah. One of the other two scrambled back up and charged him, but Kong dodged and punched him in the head, sending him to the dirt at his feet. He raised both fists and pounded him. The second red stripe flung himself. Kong tumbled, letting the other ape's momentum carry him over and past Kong. The red stripe fell to the cliff, out of the cliff and over it. The ape scrabbled for purchase, but was unable to find any. Kong should have let him fall, but he didn't. He threw out his hand and caught the red stripe ape by the wrist. Saved from a fatal fall only by the strength of Kong's hand, the other looked up at him frantic. Maybe these apes would see he was not an enemy. Grumbling, Kong pulled. He was heavy, this ape like him, but he managed to get him up on the edge of the precipice. Even though I'd watched the movie 10 times, and I had this, which can help with some of these things, I still insisted that the ape disappeared and that it was a major error on the choreography of the movie. For what it's worth here, with this section that we are looking at, one of the other two scrambled back up and charged him, but Kong dodged and punched him in the head, sending him into the dirt at his feet. He raised both fists and pounded him. That's all we get for Stone Fist, as it were, that ape. And then later, Kong turned back to the others. He didn't see the small one or the other red stripe at all. One Eye was creeping toward him, and then runs. So maybe I can be forgiven for my error there. But if you watch the movie, you will see Stone Fist laying in the dirt. I think maybe the body was moved. There's a whole lot of stuff with bodies moving in Godzilla Kong the New Empire. Somehow a warthog is next to Kong after the trap, even though none got there alive, so he can rip it over his head. It expedites the end of the scene to have that warthog suddenly be there. It expedites the end of this scene to have the ape succumb to the wounds that Kong inflicts and then be off to the side of the screen that you can barely see when they're walking away. It takes a second for you to see the thing. So anyway, this is a shorter thing, but I recommend this novelization. In some ways it's better than the movie, in other ways the movie is able to capture so much of what you can explain with this without the use of words, and that's also very impressive. Thank you all for watching. We here at Plan9Crunch release blog posts on our conventional blog. We also have these YouTube videos here, some TikTok things, and we advertise most of these things on our Facebook page, Plan9Crunch Podcast and Blog. Look into any of those as you'd like. That's a wrap.